that again. Are we on now? We're on now. How's that? Okay. We said this is a quiet group as you're arriving. You know what? It's been a long day, and it's been full of, if you've been in sessions like I have, a wealth of information. And so sitting through a final presentation is often hard at the end of the day. So if you have a need to stand at the side of the room or wiggle around a little bit, feel free to do that, because this presentation, we have a group of presenters who are very enthusiastic and passionate about palliative care, and so we want you to get all that you can from it. So our first presenter this afternoon is Mary Lou Kelly, and Mary Lou is a professor of social work and gerontology at Lakehead University at the Northern Ontario School of Medicine in Thunder Bay. Her work focuses on promoting interdisciplinary research and interprofessional education in gerontology and palliative care for healthcare professionals nationally. And her research expertise is in community-based and applied health services research, using ethnographic and participatory methods, including techniques such as photo voice. Her current projects focus on developing palliative care programs in rural communities, long-term care, and First Nations communities. So welcome, Mary Lou.
Good morning, everyone. It's
already. It's amazing.
I'm in Australia. You're going to take me down to the dementia presentation. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really exciting to have a session like this devoted to palliative care in long-term care homes, because I think 5 years ago, we probably weren't really talking out loud that much about the importance of end-of-life care in long-term care homes, and the fact that long-term care homes were both a place to live and a place to die. And those two things are both extremely important in the quality of life of people and their families. So I'm very excited to be here with such an esteemed panel. The work I'm talking about today has not been done by myself alone. I have a team of research collaborators whose names you will see there, a group at Lakehead University and a group at McMaster University. And three of the names you may recognize as senior managers in the long-term care field: Paulina Chow, Sheldon Wolfson, and Janice Sheehy. And I think one of the keys to success of our work has been that we've had the managers of long-term care sitting at the table with us as researchers, giving us, guidance and direction, and trying to make sure that the work that we're doing is relevant. We were very lucky. We got 5 years of funding from the Social Science and Humanities Research Council for this project, and then subsequently funding from the Canadian Institute of Health Research to do some knowledge transfer. We've created a palliative care and long-term care alliance, and that includes 30 organizational partners nationally and in Ontario, and we have international researchers that we have been working with, and 4 long-term care homes that are our study sites. What I'm hoping to do briefly, and I have 20 minutes, is to just demonstrate something that that a major function of long-term care homes today is to care for residents at the end of life and provide palliative and end-of-life care to support them at that time. And then to talk a bit about our project to identify what I'm describing as some of the organizational cultural barriers to shifting our thinking and our behavior to do more palliative and end-of-life care, and then to demonstrate how our project has promoted an organizational culture change and used really a whole system approach to capacity development that begins with personal support worker empowerment. We're really taking a focus on building the human capacity in the staff, and the personal support workers were our starting point because, as a previous speaker today mentioned, 80 to 90% of the bedside care is done by personal support workers, and if they aren't on the train isn't going very far. There are some international trends that support the importance of this shift in the focus of the long-term care home mandate. In England, they are doing similar work, implementing a gold standards framework for palliative care in care homes. They call them care homes rather than long-term care homes. And they're using an accreditation process to really provide incentives and to drive this process. There's a European task force that's been developed to create promising practices in palliative and end-of-life care in care homes. And Australia has national guidelines for providing palliative care in care homes. And quite interestingly, when a resident in long-term care is identified through a mechanism they have similar to their RI as needing enhanced complex care that they are approaching end of life, the home gets an additional $14 to $57 per resident per day so that they have the human resources to enhance that care, and also some additional funds for physicians to attend palliative care case conferences. So this is some of the things that we can aspire to as the trend continues. I've got a few slides on the provincial perspective from my colleague, Dr. Peter Brink. He was unable to be here today, and he's the sort of statistician on my team that looks at the RI data. So these are data from the LHINs, the 14 LHINs in Ontario, showing how many deaths, how many residents die, residents of long-term care homes die in the year 2010-11. And so one of the significant things you see right away is the variability across the 4 LHINs in the number of residents who are dying, which shows that there's not a consistent culture across the province. Another slide that he prepared for me is what happens in long-term care in terms of the transitions out. So this slide shows that in 2010-11, the residents in long-term care, 23% of them actually stayed in long-term care homes to die, where 20%, almost an equal number, were transferred out to inpatient acute care at the end of life. And because they were never readmitted, according to the data, the assumption is that they died because they didn't come back. Another 7% went elsewhere, and they were probably respite care clients who went to home care and that sort of thing. So if we really want dying at home to include dying in your long-term care home, we have quite a bit of work to do to make that a possibility for all the residents. This is just another slide showing the percentage of deaths actually in the long-term care home themselves. And the only real important thing to notice again is the variation, which I think reflects the capacity of the different homes to really provide the care to residents and to support families at the end of life. One of the main reasons I think that people are transferred out at the end of life is either a crisis of confidence on the part of the family members that the staff really can provide the care, or a crisis of confidence on the part of the staff as to whether they can really provide the care, and a result of that would be a transfer out to hospital and probably death in the hospital emergency. So the goals of our project when we started 5 years ago, we really wanted to improve the quality of life for residents dying in long-term care. And we believe quality of life is a concept that extends until death. We wanted to develop interprofessional palliative care programs because we felt that that was the vehicle to achieve better quality of life and for people dying. We wanted to create partnerships between the long-term care homes, community organizations, and researchers because we felt that this was not a job that long-term care homes could do in isolation from their community partners who had palliative care expertise, and that these people with palliative care expertise could be of great benefit and support to the staff. We wanted to create a toolkit of innovations, practices, resources in our 4 long-term care home study sites that we could share nationally. We have done that, and you'll see our website at the end where you're welcome to visit and see and download any of the things that are there. And also to promote the role of personal support workers in palliative care. Not that the role of the RPN and the RN and the physician is not important. They're very important. But we felt that the contribution that personal support workers can make was a neglected area in the literature that people were not really talking about. So we wanted to step in and fill that gap. At the beginning, we began by distinguishing between palliative care and end-of-life care. And when we started and homes said to us, we are doing palliative care, what they meant is really what we would call end-of-life care. They were caring for people who were dying in that very, very last few days or weeks of their life, at that time a very short trajectory. And we feel because the literature in palliative care is really shifting to understanding more of a chronic disease management approach to palliative care, and that a palliative approach to care can happen concurrently with acute treatment or restorative care, that it's helpful and important to push our thinking about palliative care forward for the planning, so that when people are diagnosed with a progressive life-limiting or chronic condition but are not necessarily actively dying, we can begin the conversations and the thinking, the advanced care planning, and more focus when death is not unexpected. So one of the things that people keep saying is the difficulty of prognosis with this population. And when you take this needs-based approach rather than prognosis, people will benefit by palliative care when they need it, and if their condition improves and they no longer need it, they don't get it anymore. So it's not something that can't be done flexibly. The focus is always on quality of life, is interdisciplinary, client-centered, and there's a lot of focus in the early stages on preparation of the family and education and care planning for what they would want. At the very end, the focus is very much on comfort and dignity of the resident, supporting the family and the resident in their choices, and of course issues of grief. But we have found with this type of approach that the notion of the end of life being unexpected has become reduced. Now this figure just sort of helps you visualize what I've said. So if you think of a resident being admitted in the lower left-hand corner of this diagram, you'll notice that the two sides of the rectangle are restorative care and palliative care, and that most of the focus of the care initially would likely be restorative. But over time, as that resident's stay progresses, the relative emphasis in the care begins to shift. So it's not that restorative care ever becomes not relevant. It's just that the focus on the comfort and the dignity and the palliative goals of care increase until that sort of final, what you'll see as end-of-life phase. The other thing that this slide doesn't show is length of stay. Lengths of stay in long-term care are getting shorter and shorter. I was using, when I started the project, a figure of an average of 2 years. I was then told it was 18 months. And we're just crunching the data, but I actually think that the average length of stay for people who are more recently admitted is probably much less than that now. And that is a result of the success of aging at home, which is not a bad thing, but we have put so much emphasis into community care that by the time residents get into long-term care, are eligible and are admitted, they really are of advanced stage, of advanced multiple chronic disease, most often experiencing dementia, and they really are, sort of broadly speaking, in that palliative phase of their care needs. I put bereavement on the end. I'll talk about it briefly, but it's an area that was quite neglected when we started. We started with a very extensive environmental scan, and all these data are on our website if you want more detail. But we wanted to know what families expected of long-term care, and they really do see the long-term care home as the resident's home, and they really do want the resident to die at home. When we began, they really didn't know what palliative care really meant or how they would benefit by it, and they really looked to the staff in the long-term care home to start the conversation with them and sit down with them and help them understand that. When we looked at the organizational readiness, there was lack of specific policies or programs and dedicated funding to palliative care. The palliative care approach was not explicitly incorporated in their routine practices. So, for example, when a resident was admitted, palliative care wasn't talked about as a possible care program. Advanced care planning wasn't talked about, and that sort of thing. And there was a really dedicated group of managers and staff who wanted to do that, and it's been my experience that that's typical. The personal support workers, when we talked to them, really didn't feel they could influence change. They felt they had limited training related to palliative care. They didn't really know what their role was in providing palliative care, but they were very committed to the residents and their families, and they were very team-oriented, and we harnessed that energy. We sat down with all these staff initially, and we wanted them to create their own vision for what palliative care in their long-term care home would look like, because we felt importing models from other care settings was not the solution in a long-term care environment. And so what they said was the families and residents really wanted to learn about palliative care. They wanted to talk about it. They wanted help doing advanced care planning earlier and more broadly, that it was much more than a do not resuscitate order or whether they wanted to go to hospital or not. It was what were their cultural, spiritual values, their social needs. And they really felt that it was important to identify residents in a more timely manner. So if you think about my diagram and that gradual progression from restorative to palliative care, at what point do we say this is a really good time to start thinking about having conversations with the families and implementing more palliative goals of care? So our change process was organizational capacity development. Really, our whole system change was the goal. We didn't think it was something that could be done around the margins of existing practice. We started with PSW empowerment to focus on human capital and culture change, but we have engaged the registered staff and the managers and the allied health providers as we've gone along. The policies and procedures were developed only after engaging the staff and educating them, and they have created their policy and they have created their tools. This is just a figure that we use to demonstrate our organizational capacity development approach, really starting in the roots, really, with building the collaboration and the vision and the local staff empowerment, and then kind of growing up through the team to doing the clinical care. And this differs from a lot of efforts that I've experienced many times in my life, where organizational change comes either from the top down or the outside in. Why PSWs? Because as you can see from this representative diagram, they are very much the bulk of the workforce, and as I say, the train isn't going very far if they're not on it. In each of the 4 homes that we worked with, we identified with the help of the PSW staff a PSW lead. They nominated their own PSW to be the lead, and that person liaised with our research team and sat with us as part of the research team and helped us work through the process. I just tried to diagram our change process over 4 years. We began by launching the project with a whole system kind of open house, inviting the families and the residents, letting them know that we were beginning, what our goals were. We then had a retreat with all of the staff. There were 35 long-term care home staff that came of all disciplines, but lots of PSWs. They set their vision, they identified how they wanted their palliative care team to look, and they did a process mapping exercise, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, about how a resident moves through their care process from admission, and who does what when, and at what point would we have these conversations and who would do it and that sort of thing. We then started on the staff education, and then with the staff started to create and implement these innovations and resources that I'll just very briefly introduce you to, but it's not the focus of my presentation today. Melody's got a lot of those to share with you a little bit later on. At that point, we really engaged the community partners and brought them in. In Ontario, we have a wonderful resource called Pain and Symptom Management Consultants. They're in every LHIN region. We work hand in glove with them in the homes, as well as we have nurse practitioners that come into our long-term care homes. So we worked with these community partners to really support the staff and help them with their assessments and their care plannings. We did ongoing evaluation of all of the new care practices, innovations, and then really have moved into the dissemination phase, which has been a major focus of our work in the last year. We're now into sustainability, looking at how these changes, as our 5-year project wraps up, will be incorporated into the ongoing routine. An important thing that we did was we sat down with the PSWs and got them to articulate what their job competencies were in providing palliative and end-of-life care. The physicians, the nurses, the social workers had competencies, but the personal support workers did not have written competencies, and it was hard for them to take their place at the table with the team and let people know what they could really contribute. And I can talk to you more about what these are, but the first thing that will impress you is it's such a much more complex job than just simply helping bathe and dress and get the resident to the dining room, but it's a much more kind of comprehensive type of role. We created a framework for palliative care and long-term care that includes a philosophy of palliative care, a program description, and then this process of change, and about 40-some innovations in direct care, education, and community partnerships. I'm only going to give you one example because it's an idea that I never would have thought of, because I'm not a personal support worker and I don't see the world through their eyes. But when we went to the personal support workers and we talked to them about their competencies, one of the things they said is when families are sitting vigil at the bedside and their family member is dying, we want to support them, we reach out, but there's so little we can do and we just don't know what to say. And so we sat down and they brainstormed and they came up with the idea of creating a comfort bag, which, as you can see, is basically a gift bag. But in that gift bag, what they do is they put educational material for the family about what to expect at the end of life, why their family member isn't eating. They put mouthwash and gum and a crossword puzzle, If they know that the family is of a particular faith, they will put in something that they hope will be comforting, like a rosary or that sort of thing. And these are customized and delivered to the family at the bedside, and has done such a lot to engage the personal support workers in recognizing that something really practical has come of our project that makes their day-to-day job easier and more rewarding. The benefits to residents and families, when we talk to them, we're having a lot more palliative care case conferences in the homes. Staff report being much more comfortable speaking with residents and families, and they feel much more confident in how to meet the residents' needs. They report that there's more palliative care being talked about in the organization. Their teamwork and communication are better. All of the staff are feeling more empowered, and they feel much more supported with their grief and loss. We have a project where they now do debriefings after the death of a resident. Mm-hmm. We have more residents dying in long-term care than we did before. We believe that palliative care is resident-centered, right from admission to death. And we believe that the palliative care work is not in competition, but supports some of the other initiatives that are going on, like BSO, interprofessional collaboration. And there's those required programs under the Long-Term Care Home Act, like pain and wound and incontinence, and really those can all be embraced in palliative care. The new culture that we're trying to promote has these 4 themes that we got from the PSWs themselves. We will look after you till the end of your life. It's hard to watch people die for a living. Residents aren't like paperwork, and you can't regulate humanistic care. In our homes, which are the brown homes, you'll see that although there are only 4 homes, many fewer residents were transferred out to die at the end. And in fact, in one of our homes, 100% of the residents were able to remain and die. So the benefits are increased resident quality of life at the end of life, increased family satisfaction with care, increased staff morale, motivation, and retention, fewer hospital transfers at end of life, and I think changes in the culture that will better support all kinds of things we think will be good in long-term care, like interprofessional collaboration, staff empowerment, and ultimately, if we can really demonstrate the importance of this, maybe improved funding. So thank you very much.
We're done.
Do you know where you are here, Melody?
Nope, I'm not. I'll find it.
Thank you so much, Mary Lou. I really liked your description of palliative care versus end of life. I think we often on the front line really struggle with that, to know, and that just brought clarity for me. I thought that was excellent. As well, your transition from admission to death. Just a really good education tool. Thank you so much. And PSW leads, empowering our PSWs. That's just fantastic. A great presentation. Thank you. Our next 2 presenters are both from the Durham region, and they are going to present to us on palliative and end-of-life care framework for long-term care. Melody Irwin is a social worker for the region of Durham, and she works specifically in long-term care at Lakeview Manor. And Shirley Connolly is the RI coordinator at Hillsdale Estates in Oshawa. And they are co-chairs for the Divisional Palliative Care Committee for Durham. And they've been spending the last 3 years designing and implementing palliative and end-of-life care services. So welcome. I'll let you divide your time as you choose.
Okay. Yeah, we got that part figured out. Yeah, very good. You know, it's really good that Mary Lou went first, because she gave you such an incredible base for what's going on in our long-term care industry. And can you see my short little body behind this? So, hello. So that was really fabulous. And 20 minutes isn't a lot of time to tell you what we've been doing in 3 years. So I'm going to try to touch on all kinds of things. And certainly if you want to contact me afterwards, I have business cards and we can do a lot of talking after this. As you heard, we've been part of this committee for the last 3 years. I'm the chair. Ms. Shirley here is the co-chair. We have about 20 interprofessional folks on our team from across our 4 long-term care homes. Our 4 long-term care homes in the region of Durham support over 800 residents, and you can imagine with transitions, that's thousands of residents every year. So we have a huge team. And it's really incredible to be a part of a panel like this who's doing this kind of work, because what we discovered in our own organization, there isn't a lot of folks who have figured out how to take this theory and put it into practice. And so it's really great to hear Mary Lou's team really building that robust frontline experience and doing that incredible empowerment work, because we know how powerful that is. And I can't wait to hear what Bill has to say, because I'm sure it has to do with service capacity. And we at the region of Durham have been looking at structural capacity. So we all have these pieces that I really think intermingle. So it's really great that we're all here. To get us started, we're going to take a look at a really quick stop animation film that we produced for our program. It tells you a little bit about how our committee came to be, how we used all of our frontline folks, what our vision is, and kind of what we've been up to. So I'm going to show that to you right now. If I can find Firefox. Mark. Mark. This is Mark. Everybody give him a round of applause. Okay? He told me it'd be easy. I'm sure it is. Thank you, my friend. So anyway, I hope you enjoy Marlene as much as we did creating it. Beautiful. Thanks, my friend.
Meet Marlene. She, like hundreds of other older adults, have come to live in one of our long-term care homes. She knows nothing about us, and we know almost nothing about her. From this moment on until the end of her life, our healthcare team is now responsible for her everyday needs. It's a big job because we have to offer that care in a way that fully recognizes her individuality and respects her dignity. So we have a lot of hard work to understand who Marlene is inside and out. Knowing how important the quality of living and dying is to the residents in long-term care like Marlene, a movement was started to build an expansive palliative care program. Our peers across the division were asked what quality end-of-life care meant to them, and the ideas started to grow. Above all, we agreed that our healthcare partners needed to be more than just experts in the physical. We need to take care of the whole person, our whole community, mind, body, and soul. And we had to find a way to do it in a complicated healthcare system, along with the discovery that no one had tried to build a framework like this before. We were kind of on our own, so we started to build. In 2010, the idea was planted, and a collection of long-term care colleagues formed a working group to start building a foundation of their vision. For the next few years, the group would look for research best practices in end-of-life care and applying the theory to our healthcare world. Finally, in 2012, we put the theory to practice with a study trial of the care model. And soon our friends in the other regional homes will be rooting the palliative care and end-of-life framework in their unique communities. We found the best assessment tools, symptom management guidelines, produced policies, put the tools in place, and made sure we had a way to evaluate it all to make sure that we're on the right track. And then we hardwired it into our system to keep it all connected, so that Marlene and the thousands to come after her can feel comfortable dying at home. We have big hopes about how this long-term care innovation will make a difference. The aim of any palliative care model is to treat all active issues, prevent new issues from occurring, and it should always offer opportunities for meaningful and valuable experiences. For us, the healthcare partners in the region, the goal has also been to produce a program that delivers proactive well-being enhancing healthcare, a resident-centered and staff-friendly framework that also promotes great communication. So that's the story of Marlene and our palliative care and end-of-life framework in long-term care.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That does in 2 minutes what I just couldn't do, spending 20 minutes up here. So you met Marlene. That's what we've been up to for the last couple of years. And now I'm just going to walk you through what I'm sort of calling our system map, all the pieces that we brought together. It took us a long time to figure out this. We didn't have a lot of folks who to lead and guide the way. So we really had to start with what does palliative and end of care life mean for us, and we heard some definitions over here, and we struggle in long-term care to know what end of life is. What is that determining factor? And so for us, we really use that good Cancer Care Ontario framework of stable, transitional, and end of life on the palliative performance scale. So 30% or lower for us is end of life. So we started by building policies about end of life and how to do good quality care conferences, because those are one of the key points of care. We also, as you saw, picked out the best assessment tools from across Canada using the ESAS, FAST scales. We've developed flow sheet records and intervention guides for every stage of the palliative performance scale. We knew we had to treat, we wanted healthcare to be proactive and resident-centered, so we pulled on all the best practice symptom management guidelines that we can find. And then we hardwired it into our system. We wanted to make sure that we had a foundation for all of our staff to feel confident and competent, because I love the word you used earlier about crisis confidence. Confidence crisis of confidence. That was one of the hinges of our organization. So we wanted to make sure they had the right resources and tools hardwired into our organizations, like progress notes, care plans, and care conferences again. And then we knew that as a divisional group that we were going to take all this theory and put it into practice, but we didn't want all of our individual homes to have to reinvent the wheel and figure it out all for themselves, because we know, and all of you know, that we're also incredibly busy already in our long-term care homes. Many of us are wearing more than one hat. Would you agree? Do you wear more than one hat in your home? And so we didn't want to put further pressure on all of our long-term care homes to figure it out. So we made sure that they had toolkits for our rollout, that they had manuals and books that we endorsed, so they didn't have to think about it. We built in evaluation components, because in this day and age, we need to know what we know. How do you know what you're working? How do you know what's working? We didn't want to spend all this time and not know and go down the wrong path. So we use things like family perceptions of care. We even have a program survey for our organization. And then certainly we built in the education tools like Meet Marlene that helps to explain really easily what we're doing and what the vision of our program is. We endorse things like the Spikes program, because we want our registered staff to have confident and competent conversations with residents and families. And we put together brochures and other tools for them to use. And some of them I brought here for you today if you want to take a look at it. So the idea was build this foundation and make it so people could take it and go. We see the checklist all the time about how important palliative care is and all the things that it's required, but no one's taken the leap to tell us exactly how to do that. So we wanted to do that for our homes. In 20 minutes, I can't tell you all about our assessment tools, but I can tell you that the Palliative Performance Scale is our overarching tool. It lets us know where somebody is in their life course. And then depending on where they are in those percentages, we have guided interventions, because staff very clearly told us they wanted to know what to do and when to do it. They didn't want people dying alone. They didn't want people dying without care. And so each percentage has an associated care intervention guide. We also knew that our dementia folks, those who suffer with dementia, present a little bit differently. So we had to adapt our framework to reflect their needs, and so we've built into the FAST tool to just further tune into those specific needs. And then, of course, to assess symptomology, the best gold star best practice is getting it from the resident's mouth themselves or from their own picture. So the Edmonton Symptom Assessment Scale is an incredible tool to get symptom severity over time from a resident's perspective. And this is when I say thank you, resident council representatives at the back, for coming to things like OLTCA, because this really is about you and your family, right? This is what it's about. And of course, here are algorithms. It's really hard to know all the best practice of every symptomology. On every disease process and symptom, you can get guidebooks this big. Who has time for that? Cancer Care Ontario has these beautiful algorithms that anyone can read, including PSWs. If a symptom is mild, moderate, or severe, what are we going to do about it? So now we all have a common approach. And this is our roadmap. Normally I'm allowed to walk around, but they gave me wires, so I can't. But I sent out roadmaps throughout the room for you to take a look. We agree with Mary Lou. Palliative care is a philosophy that starts from the moment someone's admitted. In our organization, within 24 hours, you're going to be assessed for your palliative performance scale. We want to know what's going on for you. We want to know what kind of symptoms you're having in the here and now so we can help. We also know that we had to choose some other points in time to tune into folks, including readmission from hospital and significant change of statuses. We didn't want people to get lost in our system. When someone has a palliative performance scale of 40% and up, those aren't folks that we're going to tune into for end of life. They're doing okay. They're using our rehabilitation programs and restorative care programs. Those folks are okay. It's the people that are 30% or less that this gives us an opportunity to tune into. Now, we know folks in long-term care can kind of even out at that 30% score. Think of the folks that are sitting in geri chairs that need extensive care, maybe to eat, to dress. If they remain stable after 3 weeks of weekly assessments on that 30% scale, we move them back to quarterly. So again, we can refocus our attention to the people who really do need end of life. And then when folks are 20% or less and they're identified at end of life, we do weekly assessments, or more frequently, depending on the severity of their symptoms, we need to keep on it. And you can see that we have our roadmap goes down the road of, does someone have dementia or not? Because if they have dementia, how you assess pain is going to be different. How you assess anxiety is going to be different. So we needed to make sure we're communicating clearly as an organization. What do you do about that? And of course, using the domains of issues, we're going to tune into our care plans. And again, we have a lot of those here for you to take a look at. Then we document, and of course, we continue the circle of care. So that's our roadmap in a very simplistic shot. Thank you.
Yeah, she's very energetic, not like me at all. I'm very calm and subdued. So now we had to... So now we have to take all this theory that we just went over for 3 years and try and put it into practice. For us to go and do that with all of our 4 homes, we thought was a monumental task. We wanted to minimize the impact on our residents and our staff. So Hillsdale Terraces in Oshawa decided to volunteer for a pilot project. So that's how we started to revise our framework after we finished doing it for the last 3 years. So the Home Palliative Care Committee looked at roles and responsibilities within their facility committee, who should be on it. Then they came up with a communication plan and moved off into a kickoff event. It was an all-day event. There were prizes, and we did surveys and quizzes, trying to see what everybody's knowledge was about palliative care. We then moved off into the beginning of the pilot. We did it from April to October, and we used a 50-bed unit. We then started training the registered staff, the PSWs. We did a more formalized training for them, and then we also did a general training for our environmental staff and our dietary staff. We talked about the PPS and the ESAS and how best to use them and when to use them. We got feedback from the staff about our framework, and then that caused us to do revisions with the previous work we had just completed. We then settled everything off with a post-trial celebration. So how this trial made a difference, we went back to our policies. We revised them according to the feedback that we received from these homes. We revised our care plans. We used Cancer Care Ontario care plans, and they were just too comprehensive. We needed something simple and quick for them to do. So within our software, we have a library that puts the residents in stable, transitional, or end of life, and they just have to go in and check mark the interventions. So it's quite easy. We formulated some templates within our progress notes, so the registered staff were able to know what they needed to put in those templates so that everybody was on the same page when it came to a resident and where they were on the PPS scale. Then we developed a rollout toolkit to help the other 3 homes with the rollout and the implementation of our palliative care program. Back to validate. Energetic.
So the lifespan of our palliative care committee, you heard that for the last 3 years we've been building this foundation. Now we've handed over to our homes so that they can plug and go and build it as they see fit. And right now we're in the rolling out phase. As of January 1, this is why I may be looking a little tired. As of January 1, this is what everybody's into. Everyone's getting the mass amount of education, and everything is running, including presentations to our resident and family councils, because they're such a key part in end-of-life care. And certainly what we know is we're at the beginning stages of our learning. I know it took 3 years to learn this much, but I know once we implement it in a home, in our organization of over 800 residents, there's going to be a second phase of learning that hopefully next year I'll be able to talk about. And then of course our goal is always continuous improvement, right? We know best practices change, how we approach end-of-life care changes, and so we've committed to making sure that we're on top of those things and communicating them to our organization, as well as doing innovations. We love Mary Lou's idea of gift bags. We have beautiful palliative care carts with very similar things. Lots of great innovation happening out there. Thank all of you for caring about palliative care and being here today, and thanks for letting us share. Thanks very much.
Thank you. That is a fantastic framework. Amazing. Your creativity has just been incredible, and it's good to see it rolling out. And I really like your approach that giving people how to do it really helps everyone who's so incredibly busy on the front line. Our final presenter today, Bill O'Neill, is actually going to speak on operational models for improving palliative end-of-life care in long-term care. And Bill is at Kensington Health Centre. He joined Kensington in October of 2000 as the founding executive director. And he brings a combination of industry and not-for-profit experience. And he is responsible for day-to-day operations of Kensington Gardens and Kensington Hospice.
Beautiful.
Welcome.
So, okay, you can all relax now. This is a really high-energy presentation. I have to figure out how to get out of here and into my... I'll let the techie guy come. Again, you've seen a lot of information around clinical, how to implement clinical programs about end-of-life care and palliative care and long-term care. And I'm going to show you sort of my experience, our experience in developing a hospice as part of a long-term care program. It is the hospice video first. And I'm going to show you video too. But it's not going to be... Oh, no, I don't. Oh, where'd my video go? Where's my...
I wasn't sure if he was ready. I'm just trying to help him.
Okay. My video didn't start in 2010.
Okay, hold on.
It started a little bit earlier than that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the hospice. So it started... How do I get a full screen?
I'm working for you.
Come on.
There is a 125-year history of healthcare provided on the very grounds where Kensington Health Centre and the hospice now stand. Understanding the historical significance of the chapel lies in its connection to the medical care provided just south of the chapel since 1888. Where the current Kensington Gardens buildings stand at 25 and 45 Brunswick Avenue was the St. John Surgical Hospital for Women, established by the Anglican Sisters of St. John the Divine in 1888. The sisters were an extraordinary group of women. They were trained nurses committed to opening a surgical hospital to provide medical care for poor and needy women in Toronto, regardless of race and religion. The institution's primary goal was to stabilize the high maternal and infant mortality rates that prevailed in Canada from the 1880s to the 1920s. So that the hospital did not totally rely on charity, well-appointed private rooms were also available for those who could afford to pay. The stone that you see in the hospice foyer was the cornerstone laid in the women's hospital when it was built in 1888. The hospital met a great need in Toronto and operated at full capacity with a waiting list. In an attempt to meet some of the demand, The hospital, chapel, and convent were converted into patient rooms. The 38 Major Street Chapel was built in 1892 to replace the hospital, convent, and chapel space that was lost. The building was designed by Mr. Frank Darling, a Canadian architect that largely influenced many of the structures built in Toronto in the late 19th century. However, Mr. Darling's design was altered by the Reverend Mother, who urged him to comply with her aesthetic tastes. One of the most noted features was the rood screen. Rood screens were a common feature in late medieval church architecture and would normally be a sculptural representation of the crucifixion. Typical of most rood screens, on either side there would be statues of Mary and St. John. Instead, in the Major Street Chapel, there was a semicircle stained glass window above the altar depicting Mary and St. John. The window was referred to as the Mary Window. The Mother Foundress was also influential in determining the design of the chapel ceiling, which caused conflict for Mr. Darling's design plans. He argued that the ceiling should have beams between the walls in order to support the red cedar roof. Other architects were consulted and agreed with the plans of the chief architect. However, Mother Foundress countered that such strong reinforcement would be aesthetically unappealing, and she ordered to have the steeple erected without it. Ultimately, the Mother was successful in ensuring that the design of the ceiling would suit her vision of arches that rise without beams, obstructing the view of the vista from the entrance of the chapel to the altar. The wooden arches have remained in their original form to this day. The hospital had a distinguished career for 62 years and overcame many serious financial difficulties during that time. Eventually, the hospital could not compete with the secularized government hospitals that received large budgets and were able to provide medical services a lot more affordably than privately run religious hospitals. The Women's Hospital was closed in 1937, but continued to provide services to the Kensington community for geriatric care until 1953, when the hospital was purchased by the Raxlin brothers, and the name was changed to Doctors' Hospital. When the sisters moved, they deconsecrated the chapel and removed all of its ecclesiastical artifacts. Following deconsecration, the chapel served a variety of secular functions. The principal one was the utilization of the space as a meeting and lecture room for the Doctors' Hospital. High above the front of the lecture room can be seen a blocked space which had contained the removed stained glass Mary Window. Following the closure of the Doctors' Hospital in 1997, the chapel was used for a variety of activities. The building became derelict, but because it was over 100 years old, it was a listed historical building and protected from demolition. In keeping with the tradition of providing healthcare services on these grounds, it is a most fitting conversion of the chapel to become a hospice, providing 24-hour end-of-life care to individuals and their families. We can draw some similarities between the hospice and the original Women's Surgical Hospital. The hospice is also supported by its community and strives to provide a home-like environment and to care for those whose palliative symptoms are often inadequately managed in the mainstream healthcare system. We hope to be making history with the care we are providing today.
Oh, it's already up?
No, it's here. I'm not going to do that one.
This one?
Yeah, it's.
This one
yeah.
you want?
That's it.
Okay, let me pull it up
Perfect.
to full for you.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Sorry. Have I mentioned I have a darn near broken hand?
I know you told me 3 times.
I know. And yet no one is loving me. It's terrible.
So our journey into end-of-life and hospice care started back in 1888. So it's been a long journey for us. And some would say that some have not weathered well. But it's been a journey. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the impact of hospice care on long-term care and what we've been able to learn from hospice care when we started to deliver hospice care back in 2011. Just to give you an overview of the health center, the Kensington Health Center started in 2000 with the opening of Kensington Gardens, a long-term care home. The other piece of the operation is the hospice. We currently operate at Kensington Eye Institute, which does cataracts, glaucoma, retina surgeries. We're doing right now we're doing about 10 to 12,000 surgeries a year in that area. We have Cancer Screening Center, our foundation, and our research institute. So it's a going concern. A little bit of history. I've already talked a little bit about this, and you saw this in the video. The Gardens opened in 2002 with 200 beds. We opened another 150 beds in 2004. In 2006, the Eye Institute. 2008, cancer screening. And in 2011, our piece de resistance was the hospice. Kensington Gardens, the residents of Kensington Gardens and their families and friends are welcomed warmly at the entrance of this home-like environment. Again, we're lucky to have each room as a private room in the gardens. The hospice is really unique. Again, its home is in the chapel. The great room with its historic hammer and beam ceiling is a gathering area for the hospice, which includes living room, dining room, community kitchen. Our bedrooms are private, quiet, complete with large windows that allow plenty of daylight, a ledge for photos, and knickknacks from home, pull-out beds for families, and a fridge for convenience for the family members who live there. So when we were looking at the hospice, we sort of took a book from the health center and built what we call our accountability framework. It's a business model, actually based on the balance scorecard from Norton and Kaplan in 1992 out of Harvard. And we really looked at what we wanted to deliver. So our first thing was to build our success factor. So we wanted to have a quality team, be innovative and have good leadership, provide person-centered care, establish community partners, and be financially responsible. Quality team means that we're a strong, cohesive, interprofessional team. Innovation and leadership, we advocate for research, leadership, and innovation. Person-centered care, we offer resident and family-centered care to conserve and enhance dignity. Community partners is really important to us. We want to build strong partnerships within the community. I'll talk a little bit about that later. And again, financially responsible. We talk about our vision as champions of quality of end-of-life care. And again, I know we talked a little difference, the difference between palliative care and end-of-life care, and there is some difference. In the hospice itself, we are dealing with end-of-life care as opposed to palliative care. This is our accountability framework for the gardens. You can see the similarities between the two models, and we have that for all our entities. Every single entity reports like this to our not-for-profit boards. So there's a theme of continuity throughout the organization. Again, I think we talked a little bit about people coming into palliative care and hospice care and their lives before coming. As you can see, this is a good sort of graphic. This is the top of the iceberg is the people we get to see when we come in. And the whole history is below the water. We don't know a lot about it. Some residents share with us, some don't. But it's important to share the stories with them. Our philosophy of care in the hospice and in the long-term care is person-centered care. Family as a unit of care determined by the resident. The resident takes the lead on that. Interdisciplinary team approach to addressing total pain, taking into account not only the physical, also the emotional and spiritual. You can see Doug there. Douglas is our dog, a hospice dog. And Doug is actually a therapeutic dog who lives at the hospice. And does some amazing work. Often you'll find Douglas on a bed of a resident who is near his or her end, lying on the pillow, sometimes hoping for breakfast. And one of our philosophies is we are committed to adding life to each day, not days to each life. And that was a quote from Balfour Mount. For those who know Balfour Mount, he's a physician in Montreal who actually coined the phrase palliative care. And he works at the Royal Victoria Hospital in Montreal. If anybody has a chance to look him up or Google him, he's an amazing fellow. When we bring people into the hospice, it's a transition to admission. What does the move to hospice and long-term care mean for the individual, for the family? what feeling might come up as individuals and families think about this, consider this, and what losses have they already experienced through illness and other situations. For the hospice, the admission criteria is 19 years of age or older. I think the group here talked about both the ESAS and the PPS scores. We use those to determine admission to hospice care. And admission criteria to palliative care and long-term care, much like we talked about here. Palliative care meeting requests from the family or the resident. Residents assessed with a life-limiting condition. Clearly defined advance directives. And again, I think it was great to hear the program that these guys have in Durham about starting the conversation early. We do that at Kensington, right upon admission, and it is helpful. Symptom management has to be manageable by the long-term care staff. Comfort measures only, symptom management. Refer in-house palliative care committee. So we have a standing palliative care committee that meets as requested. And care plans tailored to meet the changing needs of the individual. Application to a hospice, again, it's pretty standard. We use the common referral form through CCAC. And most of our referrals for the hospice comes through CCAC and or the hospital. Private physicians and actually families could also make referrals. Again, enough was talked about the ESAS and the PPS scores, and those are the tools we use to assess. I can leave that up for a minute if people like to read it and absorb that. But hospice services, again, we talked already about the physical, psychosocial, social, spiritual, medical, nursing, complementary therapies, end-of-life, loss, and grief. The benefit of having hospice and long-term care together is we do a lot of shared services. One of the things that we're able to really take advantage of is a complementary therapy program. We have a complementary therapist who goes from building to building, and she is a rock star. When it comes to pain management, both in long-term care and in the hospice, we see a reduction in anxiety, a reduction in medication, and overall satisfaction from both family members and residents. Ritual is really important both in long-term care and in hospice when somebody passes away. We have a ritual in the hospice where we have procession, and anybody can come. When people are leaving the hospice, I should say we have a lot of processions in the hospice. We've been open since 2011. Today we're admitting our 138th resident. The average length of stay is 26.8 days. We have 75 people on our wait list. So it's an active place and highly utilized. Again, the procession happens. It's a really sort of moving program for the residents, for the staff. And I have to say I can see a huge difference in the emotional drain on the hospice staff over the long-term care staff. Long-term care staff work with the residents for a year in, year out. The hospice staff have a different type of connection to the resident. They know them for a very short period of time, but a very intense time. And they have a real establishment with the family. Again, the long-term care staff, the family might come in on a weekend or an evening or something. When hospice patients move into the hospice, we also admit the family. 9 times out of 10, they live there for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Our longest resident was there for 6 months. And basically the family moved in. So it's a different type of connection. So the procession is a really helpful thing, not only for the families, but for the staff. We have a very cool thing. You can see the quilt, and each bed has a quilt in the bedrooms, and it's the quilt that actually goes out with a resident to the curbside. And we've had some very sort of emotional passings from Indian smudgings, for those who might know what smudging is, to lots of different types of religious services, to a rock band coming in and performing. One of the most, heart-wrenching was a mother who has passed away. I think you saw her picture earlier. She had 2 daughters. One lived in California, and one lived in Toronto. The daughter from California had been estranged for 35 years, had come back to say goodbye to her mom, and we have a grand piano in the great room. And the daughter is quite a pianist, thank you. And it choked me up when I think about it. The daughter said, "Would you mind if I played my mother a song?" So we took the stretcher, or the gurney, and put it beside the piano, and the daughter played a Frank Sinatra song. And it was called My Way. And it was very emotional. Anyways, so those are the types of things that happen in the hospice. We want to take that type of thing and transfer from a 10-bed hospice excuse me, to a 350-bed home. It's challenging. I think it can be done. I think we have living proof that it can be done. But and we see some things happening already. We have stories, amazing stories that happen through both the hospice and long-term care. I think those are things we have to document. We do document them in a book that we're keeping. And we started the book some years ago. It's getting thicker and thicker and thicker. Mm-hmm. But it's really helpful for new staff coming in to sort of, through orientation, sit down and read some of the stories. Some of our shared services, we're very fortunate to have a different medical model in the hospice. What we have is an alternative payment physician model. Some of you may be familiar with it, where actually it's physicians who are on salary, and we have 3 physicians assigned to 10 beds. Sounds pretty rich, and it is. But they're on a rotation basis, on monthly rotations. So a palliative care physician is at the hospice every day. Usually coming in around 9 o'clock in the morning and leaves about 2 in the afternoon. And then he has a clinic down at the Western Hospital. So that partnership for us was really important. The medical services, again, at end of life, as opposed to palliative, become much more concentrated and much more complex in the last 20 days for a lot of patients. So we're very fortunate to have that. Excuse me. Again, I talked a little bit about alternate therapies. The other benefit of having hospice attached to a long-term care home is the whole concept of back office integration. The province in 2005 made a commitment to open, I think, 35 small residential hospices, 10-bed. And I still can't figure out how that is going to be sustainable. In fact, it isn't. So right now we have the long-term care home supporting the 10-bed hospice through HR, EVS, dietary, and other front office integration models. Excuse me. Usually don't get this choked up. The other thing we really worked hard at the hospice, and it's benefiting the long-term care, is establishing strong relationships with Toronto Hospice around their volunteer training. Currently, we have 145 volunteers at the hospice, which is it's a large number, considering we don't have that nearly in the 350-bed long-term care home. I'm not sure what it is, or what the long-term care home isn't doing to attract volunteers, but the hospice seems to attract volunteers. So again, we have about 145 who do various things in the hospice. They have 3 different types of positions in the hospice. University Health Network, we have research and education collaborations on a constant basis. We have a memorandum of understanding with Princess Margaret Hospital, UHN, for education, research, and physician services. Again, that was difficult to get. Our Director of Research, Education, Clinical Director is actually a physician at Princess Margaret Hospital. So he's our part-time clinical director. We have a relationship with the University of Toronto for student placements. We have medical residencies going through there at any given time, there's 2 medical residents going through the hospice, primarily family physicians. Music therapy, social work, psychology, et cetera, et cetera. We have a partnership with CCAC around pain pumps, surfaces, wound care, et cetera. We have spiritual care services from Princess Margaret Hospital. We are a member of the Ontario Hospice Association, and those who aren't a member, long-term care needs to become members of the Ontario Hospice Association because they have a plethora of information to help you out. Toronto Centre Palliative Care Network, as well as the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association. The other thing we're really happy about and very pleased about is the fact we have a number of research programs going on right now. Our most recent is our sensory experience in palliative care with the Ontario College of Art. So we actually have a student coming in who's completing it and has done things like lie in the bed. Check out if she can reach the bedside table, the telephone. Is there a computer handy? Is the computer a laptop? Is it a tablet? And you have to put. She puts herself in the position of somebody who's at the end of life and what their needs are: smells, color, food, air quality, et cetera, et cetera. So that research is just about to be released. It's just being published right now. We're doing something on caregiver distress monitoring before and after the introduction of hospice. Again, it's a really important tool, or really important research. As you know, people providing care in the community can be extremely financially difficult, not only financial but psychosocial, a real drain on the family. So we're doing some research on that. Understanding motivation and sources of satisfaction for volunteers, we're doing that with U of T. And this is a really big one we're doing, the quality of death and dying in advanced cancer and its relationship to caregiver bereavement, both in hospice, hospital, and long-term care settings. It's never been done before. We've just embarked on it. It's about halfway done. We did a whole section in southwestern Ontario with hospitals. We're doing 2 hospices right now, and we're introducing the long-term care section. This is, for those who know hospice palliative care, understand who Dame Cecile Saunders is. This is her famous quote, and she's sort of the mother of modern-day hospice movement in the world. You matter because you are you, and you matter to the end of your life. We will do all we can, not only to help you die peacefully, but also live until you die. So to that end, I'm going to cough my way back to my chair. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing the history and the journey and your stories of Kensington and a little bit of your vision of where you're going to. And thank you to all of our presenters. And we do have some time for a few questions this afternoon. But I think you've been an incredible inspiration to me, and by the silence in this room while you were presenting, I suspect you've been an inspiration to all of us. And just a really good example of you've taken time and energy, you've looked at what's out there, been committed to and added passion to really bring quality to palliative care, and I just commend all of you for your work that you've done. Thank you so much. What questions do you have? Would someone like to ask some questions in our... Yes.
I was just wondering, I really like the fact that you're speaking about approaching this early, especially from a long-term care setting. Have you encountered any difficult conversations, I guess, in having that with the challenge around bringing that up kind of upon admission into long-term care and how you go about handling situations like that?
Oh, I want to answer that so bad. You know what? I was talking to someone yesterday, and if we're doing our job well, actually people aren't going to know that we're doing those base assessments in that way. I agree that we need to have conversations early. Bill hit it on the head. The sooner you can start to have conversations about palliative care and advanced care planning, the better off you are. Do I think it should happen in the first 24 hours of coming into our home? No, right? So it's all about the confidence of when to have those conversations and how to have those conversations. But what we know as clinicians is we need to start our work the second someone moves into our home. So if we're doing our job well, there's going to be a transition period where we're working on palliative care and end of life, and folks don't even quite know it yet. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Good.
But yes, always difficult.
Towards the back. Feel free. Can you stand up? It'll help us all to hear.
I just have a question. I'm trying to implement PPS and SAP in the long-term care homes out in my area, and I've had a little bit of kickback from the nursing staff saying that it's difficult to apply PPS because it's a different language to the language that's used in long-term care. So she asked me if we could maybe change the wording of it
go ahead, then I have a comment.
Okay.
So to answer your first question, which was about the PPS, you are right, and your friends are right. It's not the language of long-term care. What we knew as an organization is it's impossible to change things all at once. And so we want to work with what best practices were out there. Our second phase of learning is exactly that. We want to look at, can we change the PPS so it's our language? Even when we're coaching and teaching staff, that's actually one of our teaching points was, this looks not quite like us. So you have to use your clinical judgment to make the best fit. And sometimes, we're going to be a little off, and you might think someone's 60% and I think it's 40. It's about the collaborative process and using your good clinical thinking hat.
No, I'll speak after.
I'll make a comment on that, but I just wanted to respond to the gentleman's earlier question about the conversations. In our experience, what families want to know when they're admitted and they want something in the handbook is just that we will care for your family member to the end of their life. Like, that message is really important, and that in and of itself opens up the topic. And then I agree with Melody that a lot of the stuff is our work, not the family's work. But when we started, people weren't really saying that out loud, and they seem to think the families would be upset by that. And yet what I hear is the families are reassured by that. And they're reassured to know that when the time comes, their family member doesn't have to move. And in the research that we've done, family members have said that, about 3 weeks in, not in the confusion of admission, but sooner rather than later, they would appreciate a call from a member of the staff and say, would you like to come in, whoever in your family is interested, and let's sit down and get to know your family member and their values and beliefs. And in that conversation, which is kind of more like a social history, what do you think their preferences would be? And then you keep revisiting that conversation. And so it's not that something suddenly starts. It's a process. So there was that. And then about the PPS, on our website, we do have a resource toolkit for PPS training and implementation in long-term care. This was done as part of our project at Creekway Village in Burlington. And I agree with Melody, but I think that using the tool as it's really been established is a really good starting place. And some of it is just getting familiar with the language. I mean, the homes have not thought of themselves as places where palliative care is done, and they haven't thought of themselves using that language. So, and having the team sit down and conference about where they as a group think that resident would best be placed on the PPS scale is also educational for the group. So,
I think the other thing too is you have to make really good friends with the palliative pain people in your LHIN. They are amazing, at least the ones we deal with, and they're great educators around end-of-life care. So, and the other thing is the Hospital Association of Ontario, I don't know, are they still funded or not, the palliative training? But do
On and off.
On and off. I think it's on right now.
I think it's
about
right now.
$1,800 right now that they're offering. But take advantage of that. It's great.
Now, I think someone had a question about dementia care. I mentioned in my presentation we combine the PPS with the FAST scale, the functional assessment tool. I don't know, Bill, if you guys address that at your home. No? It's difficult. There's not a lot of Mary Lou would know better than I, but in the bits of work, in the work that we've tried to pull across Canada, there's actually not a lot of work on dementia and end-of-life care. It's very, very difficult. In the region of Durham, we have conferences every year, and one year was about dementia and end-of-life, and that's kind of the best meat we have. So we're trying the FAST scale. We'll let you know how it goes.
We're actually struggling with that right now because we just had a woman admitted with advanced dementia who's at end of life, and we're having more difficulties with the family So again, with the benefit of the hospice next door, we called the intake nurse in from the hospice to meet with our nursing staff to come up with some strategies for the family and for the resident. And the resident's okay, it's the family who needed the support.
Okay, another question here?
I'm in the process of training palliative also, and in regards to the PPS, I use it in a hospice setting, and then I tell the staff, we're going to tweak where it says hobby. That's them doing programs.
Yes.
They're going in their wheelchairs, sitting at the table, doing their programs. Their housework is where they would wipe off the sink, or they put their face cloth and stuff on the rack, or put their toothbrush back. So that's how I kind of explained it to the PSWs and the nursing staff, how we're going to kind of tweak the PPS and apply it. Right?
Beautiful work.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one more question at the back.
Have you looked at the CHEST scores and compare them to PPS scores to see if both
the CHEST scores haven't really demonstrated to be that clinically useful for staff in helping them identify residents who are approaching end of life. And so that's where the PPS is much more beneficial. The CHEST score is really was designed and does a good job of predicting mortality statistically, which is different than identifying residents who clinically could benefit by palliative care or palliative approaches. So they have two different purposes. Would it be great if we could find a better way of using the raw data that we all have to do anyway to help us identify when a resident would benefit? Yes. And one of my research team members, my raw data expert, Dr. Peter Brink, is going to work on that and see if we can't, come up with some. I talked to a group who has done some work on another score that you can create in RAI called the Personal Severity Index, and they find that to be a bit better predictively, but it still isn't really that user-friendly. In the Halton, where they did implement the PPS very successfully in their long-term care home in Creekway, one of the things they did was they incorporated the RAI they incorporated the PPS score into their electronic charting, and then, as Melody suggested, when the individual was scored as 30% or less, the RAI coordinator would pull all those, and so like every Monday morning, the RAI coordinator would provide a list of the residents who were scored, in the lower. So then the team knew, and it was very proactively able to track those individuals and monitor their needs. But the RAI has great potential, but we're not there yet.
Thank you. I think we've run out of time, so we are going to end the session, but perhaps if others have questions, our presenters will be here for a few minutes. Thank you for participating, and enjoy the rest of the day.